Hello and welcome to the ACCE Learning Network Hangout for 2015. Hi Amanda. And Amanda is waving back at me. And of course Amanda doesn't actually have a voice, but she's using a text-to-speech decoder here. Now ACCEN is a place where we can connect and network with our PLN and share our learning and teaching adventures. And yes Amanda.
As usual, if you are watching us live, then you can post a question to the panel by using the Q&A feature in this podcast. But Amanda will also be keeping track of the Twitter stream at #ACCELN.
Thank you, Amanda. And Roland Gesthuizen, high school teacher, e-learning leader in Victoria, Australia. I'm also a member of the DLTV, and I'm weaving my way between gang show productions now and scout camps. I managed to time my first woggle as a group leader, which is quite a challenge, some sort of Tasmanian clover note. But I've also learnt what the meaning between the dib, 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 dob, dob, dob that I used to do as a kid. It's been a busy week, a bit of a start for me today. We've got some really cold weather in Melbourne. At the moment, we're getting temperatures of around about, there you go, 1.5 degrees Celsius in the morning. Our hydronic heating system's failed in the house, so I've had to relocate to the warmest room of the house where I could throw the kids out of and still get some radio silence. Anyway, I'll pass on to my wonderful colleague Amanda to say something. Amanda.
Amanda Rablin is an e-learning coordinator in Brisbane and proud QSIT member, and will be entertaining us with flashcards, interpretive dance and outsourcing her voice to the others on the panel while managing the social streams behind the scenes. Hopefully Roland won't take creative license and talk on my behalf in Klingon. Okay, let's get to know who we have on the panel with us this evening.
Thank you, Amanda. And we'll start from left to right, first with Danielle.
Hi, I am an assistant principal at present within a little primary school at Daisy Hill, but previously I was an education consultant with Catholic Education, working across 72 schools, lucky enough with teachers and leaders within our system. In Brisbane, of course, sunny Brisbane. I think we're getting down to a very cold 12 or 13 tonight, Roland.
Whoa, you got the only one. With cold weather. And Jason.
Good evening all. I'm Jason Zagami. I'm an academic at Griffith University on the sunny Gold Coast, where we even get warmer temperatures than even in Brisbane. And I do research into all things ICT.
Thank you. And Wes?
My name is Wes Warner. I'm the head of ICT curriculum and business education at Genesis Christian College on the north side of Brisbane. So we have a very big Queensland contingent up here.
We're doing well, but we're all doing cutting edge stuff. And tonight's show, we're going to look at showcasing some stories from us educators and the way that we perhaps built our own online communities, how we started off using the Google tools that kind of brought us all together. And we're also got an opportunity for viewers to ask questions on the panel live during the event from the YouTube page. And Amanda, I know that
tonight we saw some serious networking.
Yeah,
Mine will be online and mostly text-based. Roland will be face-to-face with audio.
And if you haven't figured it out yet, it's not as if the Daleks or Klingons have taken over. Amanda has lost her voice, not just the USB lead on her microphone, and we're going to try this experimental approach. What was that we said once before about when a computer can replace a teacher, Jason?
Then we all save lots of money.
Thank you. Now, I'd like you to point your browser at the YouTube feed, toss us some questions during the show. There's a little option there with the Q&A. We haven't done that before, but I'd like to give that a run through. Now, Amanda, what we're keen on doing is looking at some of the adventures that we've had with Hangouts and stuff. So the focus for tonight's discussion.
The focus for our discussion tonight is collaboration and professional learning networks, and our guests are encouraged to share their experiences, especially keeping in mind teachers that are just starting out on their online adventures.
Thank you, Amanda. Now, I'm curious to know what is a PLN and how we can use this technology, as long as that's where your people are. So I might throw first to Danielle. What do you think is a PLN, and how would you describe it to, say, a new teacher who's just started in the teaching service?
We're very good in teaching, aren't we, with lots of acronyms. I actually call it a passionate learning network, even though it stands for personal, because I think it's about connecting with people who have the same passions as you, so that you can learn together, you fuel and find each other, and you find ways that you can seek learning, have conversations, connect. But probably for me, the biggest thing, it's time efficiency. I think, you know, in an ever-growing world where no longer can we know everything, we have to look at the competencies from forming these connections in an online space. And I think that's what it's all about, our passion to continue learning with people of the same like-mindedness or same areas that we're involved in.
I've tried to get a handle on the jargon. I must admit, when I first heard about PLNs, I thought it was professional learning network, and it was something I had to be a part of, like a professional subject association. It was only later it dawned on me that it was the kind of thing that I've been used to doing all along. It was a really powerful idea of moving from that isolation to the connectivism of working together. There's a really nice infographic I might share if I can here, and I might use that for a springboard for the discussions here in a few moments. The infographic is one that explains a bit about how we can move from the old way of teaching and learning to more powerful shifts, where schools are becoming places of connection. We become more transparent in the way that we're working. It's probably less physical, more digital. It's very much about community building. And what's interesting was when I saw this Twitter post that was thrown up, I gave it a thumbs up and gave it a reshare. But someone threw their hat in a ring and made the comment, well, we should just simply unplug and meet face to face. I didn't think that was so much a reaction, you know, refusing the technology. But there's a perception, perhaps, Jason, that if you're going to be working in this environment and you work at these PLNs, that you disconnect from the real world and you're not going to be part of something that's community-based. Why does that happen, Jason?
Well, I think the whole notion of a PLN is translating something that we've always done. We've always had learning long before the internet, and we've had times when we get together and have networks of people that we know and so forth. It was just with the advent of networks, particularly social media, there was different ways and approaches to gathering together online and sharing ideas. And that's where PLNs have evolved out of experimentations in online gatherings and communications. So it's always had that connotation. But it's really just another form of learning in a different textual basis. It's not something in particular new, just the technology allows us to do it a little bit more remotely.
So what I'll do now is I'll get Amanda to kickstart our first question, and I'll come straight on that point, Jason. The question is from Amanda.
Q1. So our first question to the panel is, how did you kickstart your PLN, and where does your PLN live now, as in virtual spaces, not like actual home addresses?
Thank you, Amanda. Without breaking in a stride there. So where did your PLN start? And I'll throw this one to Wes. How did you kickstart your first PLN?
It was in, I was having a look at this earlier tonight. It was in May 2008 that I started off in Twitter. So Twitter was, I think it was only about 2 years old at that stage. So hopping on board there, and nearly 10,500 tweets later, at an average of around, I think I said 3.9 tweets per day, I'm here. But rarely, obviously, rarely a day goes by without tweeting something out there, whether it either be information going out or requesting information from the PLN. I find it such a worthwhile tool. But since 2008, it's moved to other social media areas like Google Plus, YouTube. Those other tools. And I don't think using one tool helps me. I think a whole series of tools to work towards that, and then relaying that back to the students. It's not just my network, but it's also I then relay that onto my students because it's all encompassing with the learning that takes place.
Danielle, how did you kickstart your PLN?
Oh, same as Wes. It was actually Twitter, and I started it actually through using my Year 2 students by trying to give them some voice and agency with parents and sort of that connection, and that sort of led to me connecting with other teachers in different parts of the world. So that sort of kicked me off, but very much like Wes, there's a whole range of different tools now that I use, and I think really important is knowing when and how I'm using these tools in my network, whether I'm using it for connecting on the content creation side of things, or whether I'm using it to connect in regards to sharing or curating information through Flipboard or through Digo, or through connecting groups of teachers, for example, to share practice or reflect upon projects that we're doing through communities in Google+. So I think it's having that whole range, but knowing the purpose of why you're using them and how you want to use them.
Interesting. And Jason, what's your story for how you kickstarted your PLN?
Oh, well, I'm going to go back a little bit further in time in that respect. Probably the first real learning I had to do was around online projects, particularly connecting up other schools and students, and as a group of teachers trying to work through all the problems associated with getting that connection going. And we'd use tools such as Usenet and email lists, but they were all around learning how to do new things, sharing those ideas through particular technologies. And then, of course, we've moved on to other more interesting and social tools. But back then, it was all just the technology that was available to help our learning processes.
Thank you. And I might throw to Amanda. I'm kind of curious how you kicked off your PLN, Amanda. I remember when I first caught up with you back in 2008 at the conference, I think it was in ISTE at San Antonio. For me, that was a real wake-up call for understanding how these networks can communicate and work together. So, Amanda, what I'm doing here is furiously cutting and pasting.
My PLN really kicked off in 2008 and started with real people face-to-face, and then Twitter became a big part of it from there after going on the ACCE study tour. Since then it has really evolved over time and taken on multiple technological platforms such as Google+, these Hangouts, Skittle Community, Facebook and many other places. But like Jason, email lists before that, definitely in person through QSite.
Thank you, Amanda. And I'd like to also welcome Lin, who's come and joined us tonight. Lin, I was going to ask you to maybe describe to us how you built up your personal learning network, the kind of people that you meet online where you get ideas and inspiration and that form a community.
Well, about 5 years ago, I started to connect with some foreign teachers online, and then it comes up to me that I thought it would be a very good idea to connect my students to another classrooms in other classrooms in the world. So from that day, I began to search for some classes which were also interested in collaborate with other classrooms in Taiwan. So, and then I get familiar to use computer, use technology in my classroom to help my English teaching. And I found it is a very useful way to get students' attention because in the real time they can contact with real foreigners, no matter they are from India or Nepal or Singapore, Japan, America, Canada, Australia. They can meet all people from the world who only can use English to communicate. Yeah, and they get used to it and became very happy to do such activities in my classroom. And from that time, I get to know a lot of teachers from other nations, and I get to know Amanda and your group here. So I think for professional learning network, getting along with such relationships among educators would be a great opportunity for us to also develop our teaching abilities and to enlarge our vision in teaching.
Thank you. And great to have you on board all the way from overseas. It's really special for us. Now, also wondering how I started off, and I must admit that I take Jason's view before that as a research scientist who working in industry, we were collaborating, communicating all the time. We may not have done it before the internet with something like the internet, but we did it with conferences, writing papers, collaboration. Scientists are in the business of constantly questioning their work, and it was a natural part of what we do, as well as keeping tracks of what we're doing with patent searches and other activities. What I was interested in is when I made the move into schools, how often they were driven by education imperatives, committees. They were they were a lot more insular than perhaps the field that I'd worked in as a scientist. But they were very quick to embrace the idea of using internet. I remember early in a piece, one of the early pioneers, Michelle Williams, started off, I think, with Margaret Lawson and some others, an Oz teachers mailing list, and just opened up a question, introduce yourself, and it just floored me, the number of people who've been jumping online. Now, I'd already done some of this before with bulletin board services, but there's a sense of collaboration and community, and it was very hard to describe to my colleagues how that virtual space really meant something. When I got to meet these people in face-to-face, I was able to collaborate them. I felt comfortable about them, knew their jokes, and then I realized that there's a socialization that begins to happen. It's a really important part of the way that you can connect. You can often find your feet with these communities. Twitter seems to crank it a lot faster. I'm able to share ideas. And with that truncation, I think that also comes a sense of the present and now and immediacy. And I think that that kind of makes it a lot more creative and a lot quicker. The people are reading some of the questions here on the list. We're getting people from different countries who are just watching through. Fiona Badger made the comment. She's saying here, hello, I started on Twitter as well back in 2007. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of us seem to be quoting sort of similar times when they were, and Twitter was still a new idea back then. I think it really only kicked off at about, was it 2006, Jason?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 2006.
It was.
Thank you. And I have another question here, and this one's by Margaret Shepherd. She's saying, thanks for the link for the poster. And that was the link for the poster that I put up from the Teach Forward group. And if anyone has any other questions, feel free to make use of the question stream. We'll be able to read them and go through them here. Now, Amanda has another question to ask, and this is her second question. The question relates to, anyway, best if I let Amanda say.
Q2. Our next discussion point is about collaboration. I invite our panelists to share a story each of how technologies, such as a social network, blogging adventure, or maybe even a Google Doc, have facilitated collaboration for you and maybe even your students too.
Thank you, Amanda. And who'd like to get started on that one? Perhaps Danielle.
I've got two. I suppose one I just wanted to mention this week because I've got a group of students who are working on a movie creation, and they're doing it through YouTube Creator. And what it allows them to do is take their mobile devices out and each group has got different parts that they're shooting, and they can just automatically upload it back to the person who's sitting in there editing. So that's the notion of that collaboration, is that creating together, and they've got their parts and they're all working and bringing it together, and just seeing these students use this technology that way is very effective. I think the other big one for me is been working with a group of teachers now for a period of 5 years and tried a whole range of different platforms to connect them, not only when we get together for professional learning, but also how do they stay connected and keep sharing across when they're in context. And have tried many different platforms, but over the last 3 years we've been using Google Communities. And I found that that's been a very powerful tool, very much like a Facebook Connect for teachers, but what it also allows them to do when they come into their browser, it allows them to see when people have posted. So the information is sort of coming to them through a notification. So sometimes I think with new teachers getting started with networks is how do they make it habitual, how do they realise and keep that notion of that connection going, you know, so that it's all the time conversation sort of happening, and that notion of having those reminders and prompts back as they're collaborating has sort of helped. And we've sort of built a whole notion of what do we post. You know, we don't have to be a master chef when we're in online communities. We don't have to be perfect, and we don't have to post these big things. It's about how do we share and build from each other, and I think that's been key too for teachers. That I think sometimes when you come into an online space initially and it's quite new for you and you're new to it, you think that everything has to be perfect, and the notion that collaboration isn't. It's about the process, it's not about the end product. It's about how do we build and connect and have that dialogue with each other, you know. So we sort of say you read, and lots of people lurk in different spaces, but how do you receive and respond back to people so that that communication's happening? And I think that Google Plus community's really helped. Now we've got 161 people. We've got people from Melbourne, we've got people from Sydney, and that sort of led off for them then connecting in other ways. So they're two sort of powerful tools that, you know, have been passionate for me with the groups that I've worked with.
Thank you. Jason?
Probably one of the most effective I've used was an online mind mapping tool, and having all students able to contribute to this mind mapping process at once, and the collaboration that engendered as they spread out through the mind map as it developed and worked in groups to build out various nodes and connections between node sets within a mind map. And that was quite an interesting collaborative learning approach facilitated by a particular online tool.
Thank you, Jason. Lin.
All students are able to contribute to this mind mapping process at once, and the collaboration that engendered as they spread out through the mind map as it developed and worked in groups to build out various nodes and connections between node sets within a mind map. And that was quite an interesting collaborative learning approach.
Those words are worth bottling there, I have to say. Well, we often speak about Jason in corridors and then decide, you know, verbatim everything he has to say. So it must be haunting Jason. Lin, what kind of collaboration tools have you had the most luck with? And could you share a story about how you might have done that with your students?
Well, in terms of the instruments I use to collaborate with other classes, I use a lot of Skype and Google Hangouts. And by the way, because I'm a very slow learner in technology, so step by step I was guided by other hosts in other nations. For example, Mark Reinhardt, okay, he told me how to use Google Documents. I can register to the activities he shared to us, and we can collaborate in the classroom to introduce some pretty places in our own country and every nation has to present some beautiful classes in our own countries, in their own countries. And then we have a little game played by via Kahoot, and it was very excited. So usually I follow some very good project-based learning, okay, PBL. And usually at the very beginning of the semester, when we start a new semester in September, we join the project called The Dot. The Dot is a picture book, yeah, very, very well known. It inspires students to be creative on their own way. So I thought it would be a very good PBL to do with other countries. And after the so-called Duck Day, September 15th, I also joined to the Peace One Day activity on September 21st. Okay, this Peace One Day is a very meaningful day for, I think, around the world. I want to introduce this important day to students to know the significance of the day. So after we do that day, we do Peace One Day. Sometimes we combine these two activities together. Okay, so love this.
Thank you, Lin. And Reinhard, welcome to the team here. You'll have to unmute your microphone. Just posing you the same question, the kind of collaboration that you might have done with PLN and the kind of tools that you found useful with your students. I'm just going to work on your audio there. If you don't mind, I'll come back to you in a moment. Wes, if you could unmute your microphone.
Yeah, okay. One of the things I'm actually doing at the moment is I've been experimenting with a little bit of collaboration at the moment using an app called Google Drawings, and it's something I really didn't see too much of the use of, and I'm working with a number of teachers throughout the world to collaborate on a project, and if I can go into a screen share, if that's possible, to show you what we're doing. I'll go entire screen, and this is what we're doing. We're trying to recreate Van Gogh's sunflowers. Now,
wow,
you see Van Gogh on the left there, and this is Google Drawings here on the right. Now, I'm working with a number of people from the United States and Australia to try to recreate this in a vector graphic. And each piece is editable with their points and their colors. Now, this can actually be downloaded as a SVG file and put into Illustrator for further enhancement. So this is something that we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. We can see a revision history of how we've worked and who's done what over the time. So this is a project that I want to open up to more people to see how art can actually be, as a collaborative nature, not just within the classroom, but outside in the whole world. So we can start using other people's talents and seeing what sort of where art can actually go to.
That's fascinating, Wes. And you're taking the collaboration beyond just the visual, more to, and I've heard of collaborative musicians that try jamming on the internet, trying to work with time lag like we have to sometimes. That's fascinating.
And given the fact that art is not my forte, I teach programming and coding, but this was just something I thought, wow, this is a great use in terms of how far we can push collaboration within our different departments that we have at our school.
And Amanda just made a question there for Jason, a question that was posted.
Jason, there is a question. What mind mapping did you use?
Jason.
The one I actually used was called Concept Mapper. It's no longer available. It was developed in South Africa about 10 years ago and needed to be installed. But it was very powerful, and certainly at the time. In fact, I don't think any of the online ones have matched it even yet. But the tool I tend now to use is Bubulous. It's a nice free online tool, and students don't need to create accounts to get started with it.
Thank you, Jason. Now, Reinhard, I heard your audio before, so I think we've cleared that now. Would you like to give us a little bit of a share?
Sure, and I hope you can hear me now.
Wonderful.
Oh, perfect.
Introduce yourself. Thank you.
So yes, say hello to the group. I'm from Germany, Europe, and I have that little chance to attend this meeting, these wonderful meetings all the time, because I have a short break between the morning lessons and the afternoon lessons. So same for today. Yes, I started with my PLN in 2009 with an American teacher who had the chance to send me a video about the arch, which is very popular in our classes. And from that time on, I was in that fantastic group Lin also is a member from. That is the HRW group. Most of you know them about. Yes, I would like to say that I'm not an English teacher, so like Lin is, or so I try to involve English into my regular science classes, because science is always connected to English language. And all famous scientists are always about nothing if they do not use English to collaborate with other scientists. So I try to involve English into my regular classes. That means all the results they found out in a regular class they present to somebody else. My network consists of about 300 teachers meanwhile. And we use the whole range of Google Drive and other tools like Kahoot to set up the learning for students. We do not always invite students, or mostly teachers and experts, real experts from ministries, who tell our students about a certain thing, like about the situation in the Antarctica or in the ocean, life in ocean, how does climate and oceans are connected, something like this. And it's always a great challenge for the students, because their English is very poor and they try to understand a lot. So no English teacher present at that meeting, so they can try to find out that they can be understood, and they learn a lot by listening and by speaking. That is why I try to involve English into my classes, and yes, what I usually use for tools. So far by me.
Fantastic, and nice to be here. Yes, sorry, Ryan.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Now, we both share a science background. Ich kann ein bisschen Deutsch sprechen, mein Holländisch ist besser. That wasn't Klingon, by the way. The sharing I have is with Google Docs. I decided to break up my students into homework study teams. Rather than doing every second problem in the book, the study team would work on all the problems together. There were about 6, 7 study teams in the class, with about 3, 4 students in each team. They used a Google Doc to actually collaborate and share. What was interesting was how they negotiated which questions to handle, correcting each other's work. I was able to track their progress on answering questions in the class. It gave a sense of collaboration within a classroom. It was rather odd, because I've tended to use Google Docs for projects that involve groups outside the classroom. This was operating within the classroom. And I think it was really powerful for the learning that was actually happening, where students felt that they were just answering the questions alone in a textbook. Yes, they could ask the person next to them, but the real colleagues they were working with were other people scattered within that classroom who they had a chat window with and they could divide the labour up with. The synergy was really quite powerful. I threw open to students the option, do we discontinue it? And they've all elected to continue collaborating. They were aware that I could track the progress, I could look at the history, but importantly that I could see that there was some real learning that was actually happening. I had a sense of presence by being able to open up all of the tabs and being able to jump between the screens, answering questions, and my role was more of as a facilitator, being able to change some of the questions around or provoke it. I'll be giving a workshop to the staff in a fortnight, explaining to some of the teachers there how to do it. And to do that, I'm going to use a screen share product. I'll toss up the video into YouTube, and I'll be able to have some of the students add their voice to that collaboration process and sharing. So it's an oldie, it's a goodie, and it's Google Docs. Now, Amanda's posted another question, but before I go to that, Amanda, if you don't mind, if I butt in, I have another question that's been put forward from the group outside. This is from, let's have a quick look. And it's a question by Stella Luca. And the question that Stella was asking is
this similar to Google Communities? PLN seem to be like blogs. Looking at ACCELN Learning Network Space Education at the moment as a sample.
So I might ask that of any of the others in the group. Do you think that's the same as what we're doing?
I think it depends upon the purpose of what it's about. If you've set it up specifically for students to support their learning, it tends to come under the name of a personal learning environment, where you've set up a set of tools. The distinction is, though, that it's a set of tools that the students have agency over. So as opposed to a learning management system, if the students have created their own WordPress site with some social media interactions and so forth, or a Google site with some various tools where they can manage their own community and networking aspects, that's different to teachers and educators who set up their own personal learning networks, often with similar tools. So personal learning environments is for the students, and personal learning networks tends to be for the teachers, although in many cases they often represent the same set of tools and used for the same purposes. It's just the teacher is often facilitating the setting up of the network for the students in the learning process.
Do you think it's something that teachers sometimes confuse, that they wonder how it extends from their behaviour in Twitter to where it translates in the classroom, Jason?
Well, I don't think an awful lot of teachers, even our most experienced, have really embraced supporting students in setting up their own personal learning networks. Teachers, by our nature, tend to be control freaks, and we like to manage things even when it's probably detrimental for us to do so. And actually getting students to create and manage their own websites, and not just websites, but learning management systems, for example, setting up their own Moodles and all of that. Most teachers default to the idea that they need to set that up for the students. But the power of learning personal learning environments is that the students are setting it up and managing it themselves, and the learning that comes from managing that is the big advantage.
That's fascinating. So it's kind of ramping up the metacognition rather than just thinking about your learning, but actually taking charge of that learning environment and scaffolding it in a way that's going to accelerate it further.
Exactly. We can see the advantage of setting it up for the students, but there's even greater advantages in letting the students set it up for themselves. Guided and supported, but having that control over that learning environment is where the real advantage of a personal learning network is established.
Fascinating. I never quite thought of it that way, Jason. Thank you. And a shout out to Fiona Bancher, who makes the comments from one of the questions that were posted.
This is awesome. Loving the international flavour in tonight's session.
So, thank you very much, Fiona, for that post. Now, I've got Amanda. Amanda, of course, has been sitting very patiently on the side here while I've been yammering on, and she has got her share here. The question was about collaboration, sharing a story how each of us has actually used the technology and the network. So I might throw to Amanda here and ask her to read out what she's sitting here.
Amanda, my sharing for this one is a paper that Roland and I wrote for ACEC last year, where we analysed tweets from the 3 ACEC conference before that. It included many large Google sheets of data and also many drafts of writing via Google Docs. The commenting and history processes were key to our writing, since, despite popular opinion, we are two separate people and live in different cities. We have a similar writing style and were able to chat and delegate and rewrite through this process really well.
Thank you. And it has been a lot of fun. And perhaps that's why bringing together like-minded people. Schools can be insular places where maybe there's only one art teacher or one technology teacher, and those networks can now extend horizontally, so you can bring together, rather like how a subject association operates, people of a similar interest and background. Thank you, Amanda. Now, I'm also conscious of the time here, but we've got a third question that I'd like Amanda to read out. This one is about the way that we think of our viewers and the advice we give to them, and I'll pass to Amanda to read that out. So, there we go.
Q3. For our wrap-up, let's think of our viewers and the advice that we can give to teachers who are just venturing into these collaborative online spaces and starting to build a PLN. What advice would you give to these teachers?
So, question, Amanda, there's about what advice we give to teachers. And I know Danielle is waiting to spring on it because she's on the left-hand side of the screen here, but I might jump to Wes because he thinks he's got the patience of time there. And the words of wisdom, Wes.
You did the old reverse alphabetical. Yeah, I think probably one of the best things to do is, you know, how I mentioned to my staff with PLN, with Twitter, was to do a search for something that you're passionate about with curriculum. So look for a hashtag, right, and save that search, and have a look at that every couple of days, and see who's been tweeting the most about that, and then add them, and follow those people, and then just build it up from there. So it comes back to a little bit like an old saying, seek not what wise men sought, seek why they sought it. So once you start following that search, you say, well, okay, is there something that I can sort of contribute, to this, why, and lead the conversation along those lines, and really make it your personal network, your own learning network. Don't be just a follower. Get out there and lead it as well, and make it part of yours. So a little bit like Jason was saying, having a little bit of agency, having a bit of ownership over that particular network. So don't be a lurker. Get out there and and enjoy the network for what it is.
That's a really lovely thought, Wes. It's about recognising what the network is about, beyond just simply being a passive consumer, to be an active producer and a contributor. And perhaps it's a little bit easier now. There's a generation that's used to the idea of authoring online.
Absolutely, and it doesn't have to be Twitter. It can be YouTube. It could be Tumblr. It could be any sort of one of those platforms. But whatever platform it is, get out there and embrace it.
Good advice, and I know that when I've had time with some of my student teachers, I've shown them Google+. If you need more and you've got an essay to publish, this is a good platform for doing it beyond just 140 characters. Howard, if I can cross to you, I'd like to ask you that question. What kind of advice would you give to these teachers? Advice you would give a student teacher who might be thinking about embarking into a collaborative online space and building their PLN. What advice would you give to them, Howard? Sorry, Reinhard.
Sorry, I just have a little trouble here. Maybe somebody else should answer the question first. I will be again back later.
Thank you. Lin.
I think first of all, I would like to encourage these teachers to start the first step. In my memory, the first time I Skyped to a class from the UK, I spoke English, trembling, and I was so scared, but I was very excited. So I think teachers who like to do such kind of colorful and very interesting collaboration with other nations, it is fun, but you have to work out so-called your comfortable zone. Yeah, because we all feel very safe in our own closets, our own classroom. But when we step outside, we can see more and very, very marvelous view of the world. Not only students can be benefited, also a teacher also can learn a lot from this collaboration. So I will encourage them to start the first step via PBL learning, or just start to do Skype meet with other teachers in around the world first, because now there are Google Classrooms and Skype in the classroom. Yeah, and there are more and more tools we can use. Not like about 5 years ago, I started on my own, in my own room or in my own classroom, to find other teachers around the world. Once I stepped out, other teachers will help me to get in contact with larger scale of a learning field with other teachers or educators in the world. Yeah, such like you, ACCEN, this wonderful group, which you introduce a lot of new knowledges to me. And yes, I will bring other teachers here next semester. There will be a secondary school teacher who was my student before. She now is teaching in a secondary school, and her school assigns her to teach a so-called international education class. And she asked me a lot of questions, like how to do this from the very beginning. So I think the first suggestion I'll give them is that you just start, just have fun. Okay, there's not so scary. I have I've done it so many times.
Thank you, Lin. And there is a sense of bravery in just going in and having a go and trying it out. Yes. Stella Luca just made a comment here, in the question room here, and Stella said,
"Thanks, Jason. Good to know the different aspects."
Thank you, Stella. And I also have another comment from Fiona Banja, who talks about her advice for teachers.
Advice for teachers beginning their PLN. Make the list of followers, and those you follow as broad as you like. The most interesting conversations are with those people beyond your normal sphere of influence.
And I might then take to Danielle. Danielle, when we're moving beyond the school, the principal class often see a perspective that's much broader than of a teacher. They begin to see the connections between schools, between different programs, and even the community. You think that there's some scope towards teachers looking at that same courage for when they're building their professional learning network, bringing together the things that they can weave into the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also that notion too of weaving together across teachers, but also the students weaving together across schools as well. So that notion of we're in positions where we can connect other classrooms up. So how are we making sure that that student voice and that is happening across schools, you know, in different inquiry learning, you know, so they're getting different perspectives and empathy from the different contexts that we know. So I suppose as leaders in schools, how do we build from each other and make that connection for learning in classrooms? So that's probably key, trying to get our teachers to make those connections and so students can talk to other students.
Thank you. And Amanda had some thoughts to share as well, and I'll just cross to Amanda to read out.
I think the idea of sharing and joining the conversation, even if you feel you don't have much to contribute. For me, I started note-taking and sharing thoughts during conferences via Twitter. This was because the idea of blogging was too long and intense. The conversation element through Twitter was important to me, and I was surprised when people really connected to what I was saying. And from there I get to hang out with people globally and talk about learning another.
And didn't finish that first sentence. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Didn't finish that first sentence, did I, lol?
Thank you, Amanda. I love the electronic lol there. It's been a wonderful night tonight. I've really enjoyed some of the different things we've talked about. I've particularly enjoyed the use of the Q&A. I've had some lovely people drop comments and suggestions, and that's what makes it really live. I've also enjoyed Lin and Reinhard, and at this point tonight I'm going to ask us to pen up some closing thoughts. We've covered a number of different things in the topic. I've learned from Jason the importance of perhaps students engaging in learning. So it's a chance to pick up on a thread, something that you'd like to talk a bit more about, or just add some closing words. I will start from left to right, first with Danielle.
I think the most important is find and fuel each other, is my closing thought. So whether it's students finding and fueling each other with collaboration, or whether it's us as educators, that, you know, it's that notion that we can co-construct and build on that collectiveness together.
I love that idea. Find and fuel each other. That's going to become a new poster. I'm always running around looking for new quotes. If I can use that one and cite you?
You can cite yourself. Make it burn bigger.
That's right. I'll retweet you, RT ampersand. It's nice how this medium is also still kept in, isn't it, Jason? It's still kept the idea of not authority, but acknowledging the work of past people by being able to retrace these conversations. And people go out of their way often to sort of work out where the original post had come from, to acknowledge them in a post, in a tweet. Jason?
Well, probably the thing I'd finish with is the idea of personal has always worried me a little bit, because it's much more of an individualized learning network. There's nothing so lonely as being in a network of one, and you really have to go out and have a purpose for your first few networks before they become established. And I often find conferences or particular projects where you are forced to converse and set up that communication is the starting point. Having a personal network just doesn't happen magically. It involves quite a bit of work, but it can grow slowly and purposefully. But that's where I like the term individualized, where you create it for your own particular purposes, for your own individual needs, and it will then serve you for those needs. But a network doesn't have to serve just one need. You can have a particular learning network that you set up for at conferences, another one for a project, another one you might have with work colleagues. So it's not all just one amorphous personal learning network. You often may have lots of different networks. And I'll finish on that.
That's a good point. I mean, and there are some funny ones. You can have some fake networks, Jason. You might have fake Roland, fake Amanda. But is there such a thing as a private learning network?
I don't think it could be private in terms of just to yourself. That sort of defeats the purpose of network. But certainly you can have a network, a personal learning network just within a class, where you've got small groups, for example, being nodes in a network and sharing ideas amongst each other and maybe sharing amongst the whole group. So you can simulate smaller collections, but it can't, by its very nature, it can't be purely private. It has to share with someone.
That's a good point. It'd be a bit like using the Memo function on your phone and replaying it back later to hear what your ideas were and then commenting. That'd be scary. Lin, some of your thoughts for tonight's show?
Okay, so I'm just thinking of about 8 years ago, I got my bachelor degree, and when I entered into this collaboration for these years, I thought maybe sometimes we can open a course online and get PhD here. We can learn a lot. That is personal learning network. Okay, but in Asia, it is very difficult to develop such idea in practice, in the real learning thing, because in Asia we have a lot of things to do in school. We have many subjects, not only Chinese, math, social studies, science. We have to learn English. I have many English classes in primary school, in secondary school, in high school. Well, and the very special thing in Asia is not only in Taiwan, but also in Korea, in Japan. We all cram college into students' brain, and so their creative thinking has been dropping down a lot. And now we accept many new ideas from so-called flipped classroom. We want students to find their own learning goals, wish them to do preview before the class. But indeed, many few students can do so. Even teacher ourselves don't know how to do that exactly. Yeah, unless you just like some teachers, they have some collaborate with other classrooms. Maybe we have such idea and such thinking of how to do this in our real classroom. But for most teachers here in Taiwan, even today, this morning I went to a high school. We have a seminar about how to do garage band, yeah, in Apple, in MacBooks. And after that, they told me that they are going to, they are very interested in so-called international education. So what we have done in primary school. When I told her that we have done blah, 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 such things, well, they were overwhelmed. So, wow, how come primary school students can be so relaxing? Don't they have other subjects to study? And so why do you have so much time for them to do such things in English classroom? I told them, of course, this is English class. I have to use the authentic environment for them to learn English. But in math, in social studies, in science, well, I cannot help so much. Yeah, that's the
Thank you, Lynn. It's always lovely to hear your perspectives. And Reinhard.
Yes, now it's up to me. First of all, I would agree with Jason about the different learning networks you have. I have WhatsApp network, which only runs with teachers. I have that networks where teachers are connected with students, students with teachers. We have that network where students are connected to students. You have, I think, a lot of sub-networks in your personal network. I have for it mainly. My final phrase is we in Germany have a lot of trouble with data security. So we are not allowed to use Twitter at school. We are not allowed to use Facebook at school. Using Google is a great problem in general. And that means we have to use other tools for collaboration. So I think in Germany we are on the right way to get this all sometimes accepted by the ministries, but at the moment we still have a lot of trouble with it all. But if some teachers who are now joining this conference would like to do the first step for a collaboration, maybe that, first of all, I would say it's a lot of work to start it. And if you have started it successfully, then you have, I think you do not have to do a lot anymore to get more and more connections. But the first step, I think, is the very, very most important to get everyone involved, to get the administration involved, to get other teachers maybe from your own school involved. I think that's the most work if you would like to get started with such a collaboration. And I think there are a lot of communities in the internet where you can search for your first connections. Yes, that is what I would like to do to say at the end. And I hope that every one of you who have not just set up such a network yet, I wish them a good luck to do this throughout the next years. Thank you so much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Reinhard. I can appreciate some of the challenges that teachers in Germany must face. We have enormous flexibility with using tools, and there are some strict rules about disclosure of private information and having an education context, but it is not something that actually precludes us from being able to explore the 21st century learning that we want to see happening in the classroom, or the digital citizenship that we ask our students to embrace. I think that it's a challenge sometimes for us to work across the different countries, and it's good that as educators we can still collaborate and work this way. Wes?
Yeah, so I totally agree with my peers here in terms of that building up that PLN. It's a little bit like a slow burn. It's something that you have to work at and craft it to guide it to exactly what you want it to be. And you would have multiple different PLNs, even within my class, like curating your own books using Flipbook and giving that link out to the kids, so they're all curating and adding to that particular base of knowledge that we have there in the classroom. So I think with anyone out there looking to get into it, is basically it doesn't have to be one of these new founded pieces of social media. It could go back to the old computer forums as well. Just logging on with those forums and just posting questions and receiving answers that way.
Thank you very much, Wes. Amanda, you've got some closing thoughts you'd like to read out here?
Well, it looks like there's been a little bit of a problem with Roland and Amanda. So I guess it'll fall to me to read out their final closing blurb. Let me just grab it. So make sure you check in the ACCELN homepage for more information on next week or so, and join the ACCELN Learning Network on Google+, and you'll get an invite to join their next show. And if you'd like to be on the panel, you can also let them know. And remember, you can view their past Hangout recordings at acceln.wikispaces.com. And they look forward to seeing you then. Everyone wave and pull faces.